Evening, everyone. It's 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025, and we are at the Committee of the Whole. I would like to call the Committee of the Whole to order, and I would like to begin with our land acknowledgement by acknowledging that the municipality of Jasper is on Treaty 6 and Treaty 8 territories, as well as the Jasper House Métis District. This is the traditional territory, meeting ground, gathering place, traveling route, and home to the Denze, Asinawachi Nia, Asinawuchi Winawak, Nahayawak, Anishinaabe, Secwepemc, Stoney Nakoda, Mountain Métis, and Métis. The municipality of Jasper acknowledges the land to honor the relationship Indigenous people have had with this land, to honor to remind us of our responsibility and obligations to this place and to Indigenous peoples, and to affirm our accountability to address the ongoing impacts of colonization that continue to affect Indigenous peoples. Councillors, we are at a point of the agenda where I would call if there are any additions to the agenda. Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. I would like to propose adding an in-camera session under strategic priorities, whatever the relevant designation is under FOIP legislation, as item 10.1.
If we'll be going in camera, should we make that 11.1 after upcoming events? And move adjournment to 12, depending on what happens in camera?
Fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other additions to the agenda? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Keller MP, all those in favor? Thank you. That now moves us to agenda item 4, the April 8th Committee of the Whole minutes. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, then I would move on to the next agenda item, which is delegations. And do we have any delegations in the room who wish to address items on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on then to item 6.1, correspondence from the Jasper Artists Guild. And that is relating to the request from the Jasper Municipal Leasehold Society regarding a sublease agreement with the municipality. Mr. Gibbon, will administration be speaking to this, or is this in our agenda for information only?
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Melnick. So the request came from the Jasper Artists Guild to administration. They're essentially noting that the sublease agreement with the Guild is expiring in 2026. They want to start off some discussion now about renewing that sublease. And I think an appropriate action would be to refer the request to administration for a report back at a future committee meeting. Really, they've made a formal request and we wanted to bring that to council. But certainly you could forward that to administration. We can start the discussion with them and then bring back any action that would be required.
Thank you. Any questions for administration? Seeing none. We have a second item on the agenda under correspondence, and that is a letter from a resident named Laurisa Reid.
Deputy Mayor Melnick, just before moving on, so my suggestion would be that council should have a motion to refer the previous request. So they are requesting a specific action. Either council could approve it, could deny it, or could refer it to administration for additional work. That would be my recommendation, is to refer the request from the Jasper Artist Guild to administration for a report back at a future committee meeting.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gibbon. Is there a councillor who would, Councillor Waxer?
Make the motion that committee refer this letter to administration for further work and bring it back to a future committee meeting.
Thank you for that. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Our second item of correspondence is a letter from a resident, from Laurisa Reid. And are there any questions on the correspondence? There being none, there would be, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. No questions, but a comment. I spent the weekend rereading the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. And I know that we could be doing better as a municipality. We could be learning more about the history, the culture of the Indigenous peoples who called the land that we now call home. I also spent some time on the Alberta Municipal website, Alberta Municipalities website, and they released a guide in 2023 to help Alberta municipal governments understand the calls to action that are most relevant to us in terms of scope of responsibility and how it may apply to our service. In Alberta, there are 7 examples of cities and communities who have taken significant, meaningful action: Calgary, Edmonton, Grand Prairie, Lethbridge, the regional municipality of Buffalo, Canmore, and Okotoks. And then they did this by implementing framework, taking ownership of some of the specific calls to action. And I know we've made significant progress this term. We committed to working on a relationship with Indigenous partners in our strategic priorities right in the beginning of this term. We also approved a tax-funded position with the Outreach Service Department to start building relationships between our municipality and the many nations that call these lands home. We participated in cultural training, and I can only assume that all of us up here, myself included, feel like we may have moved a little further down our own path. But I know we can do better, and I'd love to see our name recognized on that website for taking significant steps. And as we recover and rebuild, I do think it's in our best interest to include and collaborate with partners, considering they were the original caretakers of the land, and they engaged in cultural burns and maintained a holistic relationship with this land, and they were forcibly removed. And those are my thoughts I had, and I just looked to my colleagues today, for conversation or just reflection.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillors? Councillor Wexler?
I agree with Councillor Hall that municipalities have a significant responsibility in fostering reconciliation with the Indigenous peoples, and especially within our own particular context. I am wondering, I understand that one of the positions embedded in the Jasper Joint Recovery Coordination Center is in fact has responsibility for Indigenous relations. Am I correct in that?
CEO Gibbon?
Deputy Mayor Melnick, for Councillor Waxer, you may need to provide some more insight into what position you're referencing. The municipality did have a pre-fire position that existed and continues to exist, but is unfilled. There is a pre-fire position of program coordinator that existed in the community's development area. A part of its responsibility, along with food security and a number of other areas was Indigenous relations and reconciliation. The incumbent, the person who had been in that position, had left the position to take a different position within the JRCC. So that might be a source of some of the confusion. The program coordinator position that was, again, a pre-fire position, approved by council with that focus on reconciliation, as a part of its responsibilities, is currently unfilled. So we're recruiting for that position.
Oh, my apologies. I had understood from conversations that that part of the mandate went with that incumbent, and as it was relevant to the recovery process. So that was my understanding. I apologize.
Thank you. Councillors, any other comments? Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. Just a question for CAO, given that position is currently looking to be filled.
Deputy Mayor Melnick for Councillor Hall. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. If there is no further comment or conversation, I would entertain a motion to receive this correspondence of information. Councillor Buxton?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. This brings us now to agenda item number 7, which is new business. And our first piece of new business is the capital budget carry forward to 2025. And Lead Director Melanchak is here to address the request for decision.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor and Council. Thank you. Yes, so today administration is coming with a recommendation that committee recommend council approve the carry forward capital list of incomplete 2024 projects to the 2025 capital budget as presented. And additionally, add the completion of site servicing for interim housing to the budget as presented. The recommendation of carry forward budget would be in the amount of $10,155,742.32. 60% of this recommended amount is work in progress. So the projects have begun in 2023 earlier or 2024. 40% of these on the list have not commenced. The 2024 budget was approved at just under 55 million, and just under 20 million was expensed in 2024. If you consider though that site servicing was added without an actual budget put to its name, the expensed amount was $22,691,725.58. So just to speak a little bit more about that, because there's the additionally add the completion of the site servicing, that would be adding it to the budget for finishing those projects in the 2025 year. Council has not seen something like this in the past, so a little bit new. Anything else that you're seeing today is quite customary. We come in the new year, we give enough time for the vendors to get us all of their invoicing. We're in the thick of finishing up our financial statements for the year. We have a good understanding of where we are financially so that we're not carrying forward any projects or dollars that are not that we don't need. So basically in all of this, you'll see that at the very bottom of page 14 of the PDF on the agenda, you'll see the addition of a recommended carry forward amount of the 2 sites. And before there was no dollars attached to those. Those are what we had to do in emergency response to ensure that we were getting interim housing set up for our community. So that would be the amount that would be completed in 2025. So obviously we're already seeing those invoices in 2025. A big thing on this as well is that just to comment that this would be covered 90% by DRP, 10% by the municipality. So they are assisting in the site servicing in this area. So just to be clear on that, you'll also notice that there's a big influx in between what we expensed in 2024 and what we're recommending going forward into 2025. That is a big portion of not recommending projects move forward in the municipal budget per se, but within the context of the municipal controlled corporation. So the amounts would move forward to JMHC budget in the housing section. So that's on page 13 of the PDF. And you can see that the amounts of over 16 million for JCHC or community housing on JC site development, as well as they're both, there's the development and then there's the construction as well. So those two amounts are moving forward, and because now that that is established, we will remove them from the municipality's budget. They will go there, and then also the funding would be recognized through the municipal controlled corporation. So that's the big differences that you're seeing within what happened in 2024 and what we're suggesting that get carried forward to 2025. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Melanchak. Councillors, lots of detail here. Are there any councillors that have any questions on the presentation or the spreadsheets that have been included? Councillors are going through items. I did make note of a few projects that were under the category of not recommended and moved to 2026. And those three are the annual valve replacement program. It's on page 12 of our agenda, as well as the annual hydrant rebuilds. Those indicate that not required in the 2025 budget, and lateral downsize repairs under sewer were three of the items moved, but there's no notation specifically moved into a future year. Does that mean they are going to be not in capital in the future year, or are they intended to be included in 2026 or beyond?
Thank you for the question. I didn't receive that level of detail from the managers and director for operations. I do think that they will appear again within a context of capital budget, but not that we're going to see for 2025. And they did not comment whether or not they were going to need additional funds in 2026. And I cannot recall, I apologize, on whether or not they are in the 26 and 20 going forward. They would be on the budget presentation from November that you saw, if they're there. But at the moment, I can't remember. Thank you.
No, thank you. Fair enough. I appreciate that. And we will be looking at capital budgets. I'm sure later on in the year, moving towards the end and planning for the 2026-27 budget years. Other councillors? Your motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick, through you to Director Melanchak. As I understand, with the carry forwards and the addition of the site servicing costs there is an addition to the 2025 capital budget of about $12.5 million. And then is that offset by a reduction of about $21 million of items that will be transferred to the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation?
Deputy Mayor, through to your worship, sorry, may you repeat your figures again and where you might be pulling them from? Please, and thank you.
So I understand the recommendation to be to carry forward to the 2025 capital budget just over $10 million of items, 60% of which have already started. So I'm going to assume that they all have funding sources, and 40% are just being carried forward. And I will come back to this, but
Yes.
I will ask later whether those are funded or unfunded. And in addition to that $10 million, there's $2.5 million to be added to the 2025 capital budget for site servicing.
Yes, that is correct.
90% of that would be funded through DRP, 10% through taxation. I'm going to ask in a bit whether there is a particular source of funding for that, is it reserves or otherwise. But then overall, as I understand, the 2025 capital budget will increase by, if we accept the recommendation, $12.5 million roughly. But will it also be reduced by the 16 million and the 5 million items for housing that are going to be transferred to the Housing Corporation? So will we see a significant overall reduction in the 2025 capital budget when all is said and done?
Thank you, Your Worship, for slowing that down so I could pay attention to the figures. Yes, so the 12.5, just over, is the total amount that we will see carry forward into 2025 if approved by council. That includes the reduction of the amounts going to JMHC. So otherwise, if we were still including the JMHC projects within the context of the municipal budget, we would see a greater impact. So yes, you are correct that it does impact the amount that we're carrying forward in 2025 into the 2025 year. Thank you.
And if I may, then my final question of the $10 million roughly that's being carried forward, is the source of funding for each of those already identified, or are there any that are unfunded?
Deputy Mayor, through to your worship, yes, they are all funded as they were approved in the prior year's budgets.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick, through you to Director Melnick. On page 12, there is a line item saying wastewater treatment plant annual capital requirement. And it looks as though there's $327,311 that are not recommended to be carried forward. And I was wondering about that because of the word requirement in it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through to the, Councillor Waxer. Yes, so this project actually was completed. It did start in 2022. It was deemed that no more funds were needed, that it came in significantly under budget for that area. So a good news story in that we were able to, what will happen is those funds would just stay where they were initially planned to come from. So whether, if, just to give context, if debenture was needed, we wouldn't pull debenture for that amount. Or if the amount was to be funded from reserves, then the reserves wouldn't be, the reserves wouldn't be pulled from it. It would just stay within that quote unquote bank account that we hold these reserves within. And then, or if there was grant funding applied to a project, these are just examples, then the grant, we could potentially, not on not every situation, but potentially go and allocate the funding to other projects through the request process. And that's just a few examples of how funding can be kind of set aside and used after the fact, because I know that this is often a question of council. What happens to the dollars if they're not spent? So that's just a few examples.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Melanchuk. Other councillors, any other questions? Not seeing any other questions. We will need a motion from committee to recommend that council approve the carry forward capital. The capital list of incomplete 2024 projects to the 2025 capital budget as presented. And then additionally add the completion of the site servicing for interim housing to the budget as presented. Your worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. Yes, I will make a motion that committee recommend council approve the carry forward capital list of incomplete 2024 projects to the 2025 capital budget as presented. And that committee recommend council add the completion of site servicing for interim housing to the 2025 capital budget as presented.
Thank you, Worship. Any other discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you for the presentation. This brings us now to item 8 on our agenda, which is the motion action list. Oh, pardon me, 7.2. Thank you, Your Worship. I seem to be moving a little bit too fast here. CAO Gibbon, I believe you'll be speaking to this item.
I'll just be doing a bit of a brief introduction. Council, I believe, knows Erin Toop. She is a contracted assistance helping with the operation of our transit system. The report today is just information update about some of the recent transit goings on and some of the things council can expect going forward. I'll turn it over to Erin to provide some of the highlights of the report. But this is just in the nature of ensuring that council and the community are informed about the transit system as it continues to evolve and as we continue to march towards our spring and summer schedule. Erin, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Deputy Mayor and Council. So we're here with a couple of themes of updates. As mentioned, the first theme being an update on the Rural Transit Solutions Fund capital project progress. So we had committed to an update to council on the electric fleet procurement process. And we've taken several steps to work strategically on this initiative. The first being to request an extension from the Rural Transit Solutions Fund program. They've been quite understanding of our situation in Jasper and knowing the mix of priorities in the community have provided us the offer of an extension to our project timeline, which we accepted, and they have given us email confirmation that we have an extra year to spend the funds, which takes us to March 31st, 2027 now instead of March 31st, 2026. So that extra time has been very timely also in being able to look to potential other procurement solutions, one of which is the CUTE ZEB. They're affiliated with QTRIC. They're a joint procurement initiative, and they can potentially provide support as well as finding us other organizations in Canada to work with on procurement of both fleet and chargers. So we're pursuing that avenue as well, and they are continuing to seek a second party interested in e-bus procurement. And then the third piece of work that we're doing is to continue to assess the market. It's been quite dynamic over the last 6 to 8 months chatting with other agencies and just trying to understand where their efforts are at on the electric fleet procurement, as well as any recent lessons learned. So as an example, I have an action item just this week to follow up with BC Transit, as they've been quite helpful, and I've chatted with their fleet department about some of the studies and work they're doing on understanding the efficacy and just kind of the state of the market for their purposes. The second piece of the Rural Transit Solutions Fund program is the bus barn construction. And so we're excited that that is scheduled to open on June 1st. We've been having discussions with our transit operating company who had a previous contract to store fleet at another facility. So we've given them the notice that they're able to move into the bus barn as soon as possible after June 1st, and they're estimating July 14th for the move-in date. Upon moving into the bus barn, we're expecting to see approximately a $37,000 a year decrease in our operating costs due to the savings that they'll receive from being able to house their buses on municipal property. The next two updates were about the upcoming service planning for spring, summer 2025. So this is a bit of a unique year as far as we understand, where Parks Canada is opening Whistler Campground and Wapiti Campground at separate times. We've made the decision to stage the launch of summer service and provide an abridged service only to Whistler's Campground starting on May 14th. So we will not be serving Wapiti Campground while it's effectively empty. And then when Wapiti opens on June 4th, we will start running our full summer schedule, which includes the stop at Wapiti Campground. As well, we've been preparing behind the scenes for the regional recovery transit service. Procurement process for the turnkey operation of that service has been started. If an RFP was launched on April 8th, and it will close on April 30th. Once we evaluate and select a vendor, then we'll be prepared with a bit more detail about that service and an actual launch date. But for now, we're tentatively assuming that that service would provide about 5 round trips per day between Jasper and Hinton, as well as 7 round trips per day between Marmot Meadows and Jasper. So looking to serve the interim housing sites that are currently out of scope of our existing local transit service. And I think that concludes my update, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Councillors, are there questions? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, my question is just about the regional recovery transit service and the tender. It's out there now. How many weeks is it out there? When does it close? And then I guess, do we know, do we have a fair amount of interest?
Thanks for the question. As far as we can tell right now, there's been several entities that have pulled the bid, but I haven't received any questions as of yet. It was launched, sorry, I'm trying to keep track of your question. It was launched on April 8th and it will close on April 30th. So that was just over 3 weeks that vendors had, which is a little bit tight, but it's a service that we really know we want to launch quickly this summer. So we're hoping people will meet us in the middle there.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. Through you to Ms. Toole. I'm curious about the Jasper Regional Recovery Transit Service. So if I understand this correctly, 5 times a day they'll go between Hinton and Jasper, then 7 times in the same day would go between Marmot Meadows and Jasper. So if I'm reading this correctly, then the people that live at Marmot Meadows, they will not use our other transit system that goes to Wapiti and Whistler. That it would be 2 separate transportations to town. Am I reading that correctly?
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Keller, yes, you are, but they would potentially have access to use the campground services through the summer. The reason we looked at kind of thoughtfully splitting up the 2 types of transit service are that our campground loops are only in operation through May to October, and we know that people will be living in Marmot Meadows year round for the next few years. So the need of that area aligns much better with the recovery funding and the recovery service. And so we made an effort to make sure that those folks in Marmot Meadows will have access to year round transit service similar to the folks displaced in Hinton.
And just one more question, but then if we had, we say campsite, site guests that came upon the bus going back to Mara Meadows, would they be able to access that bus as well?
We don't see any reason why people would be excluded from either service, and it's an opportunity for the summer to provide kind of better service to that general region of the park.
Thank you for that.
The CEO, given.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Melnick. I might just add, the which bus people choose to use probably is a bit of which is most convenient for them as riders. The regular summer service will have probably the most convenient stop for visitors to the campsite, being started towards the front of the campsite at the main entry point. The other one will be specifically targeted to the Martin Meadows for residents and people that are living there year round, as Ms. Tu mentioned. And also, this is a requirement of the government of Alberta. Their transit funding was explicitly not to support the enhancement of local transit, but to support transit for displaced Jasperites. So we're working very hard to make sure there's a clear distinction. But any of the buses, of course, there is an ability for it. They will be a part of the Jasper transit system. We just need to make very clear for government of Alberta that we're not enhancing our local transit using recovery funding.
Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Melnick, and it's really nice to see you back in chambers. My question, and I'm quite happy that we're getting an extension. That's very good news for us. I wonder, though, if will buses be, as things are rising in cost all over the place, they're going to be more expensive in a year's time, or will it be more opportunity for more grants if they are more expensive?
That is something that we're looking into right now. We have received information about costs increasing for fleet. But that's, I think, a piece of the research we're trying to do with other agencies is just understand what different sizes of buses might be available that we weren't looking at previously, to see if we can still work to fit some fleet into our available budget, essentially.
Any other councillors that have questions? So, I'm sorry, Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick, through you to Ms. Tu. I'm wondering whether there will be a fee for people using the new transit system between Hinton and Marmot Meadows.
Thanks for that question. That is something that we are still working on, but it's a piece that we're going to look at, the funding and the purpose of that service, and in determining sort of how we set the fee and the fare for that service.
Thank
You.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. Welcome again, Ms. Tu. It was nice to have you here before us. Congratulations on the project extension to the end of March 2027. Working backwards from that, what would be the point in time where council would be required to make a decision with respect to procurement, so that funds would in fact be out the door by the end of that extension period?
Your worship.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, CEO, give it.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Melnick. Your worship. So I think it depends on what's available in the marketplace, but working backwards, under the previous approach and the previous timeline, as long as council has awarded and we've been invoiced by that time, I think the arrival of the equipment on site is a different matter, which the funder isn't as concerned about. So we, think about typical council processes in a couple of weeks and, months. So I would say that, by the end of 2026, we would like to be in a position where we're making an award and starting to receive invoicing in that early 2027. And then with the fleet to arrive to follow. So, that will be a decision of the next council, most likely.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Given. I think it's important for the community to understand that we will not be rushed, and that extension is a real extension. It doesn't put us under the gun. We've got lots of time to figure this out. I wonder whether, while you're here, you could again remind council and perhaps the public about the opportunity to join the, I'm not even gonna try and garble those letters, the CUTZED Joint Procurement Initiative.
Absolutely. So this initiative, I'm interpreting the question as a bit of an overview of their program. This initiative is now, it's been live for a few years. They've already conducted one joint procurement with Canadian transit agencies successfully. And so now they're looking to launch a second joint procurement initiative. So CUTZEB is an arm of QTRIC, which is an Canadian organization that works in the field of electric fleet. They have expertise in this area as well. I think the thought that smaller Canadian agencies might struggle with procuring fleet at a cost-effective rate if they're procuring 1, 2, 3 at a time, where there's a potential benefit to bundling and receiving better pricing due to the purchase of a larger number of fleet vehicles. And so that's essentially the root of the initiative, and they would work with the organizations that agree to come on board to the second round of joint procurement and set up agreements, as well as then assist the organizations with procurement documents and administering the service.
Go ahead, Chair Given.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Malik. The only thing that I might add, Aaron mentioned QTRIC, which council might remember, but just to remind council and the public, QTRIC was actually the third-party agency that we brought on to investigate the feasibility of electrification of Jasper Transit. They're also the organization that did the investigation for a number of Alberta municipalities, sort of as a collective, about the feasibility of electrification. So they're recognized experts in the field, as Aaron said. They've set up this related organization to contain procurement activities. So the idea is that it's this organization that already has quite a range of experience and knowledge in the field, but they've set up this sort of additional cute collection of letters to specifically assist smaller agencies like the municipality of Jasper in group procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Given, and thank you, Ms. Tupin. Perhaps nobody else needed that refresher, but I did. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher MP.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick, for you too, Stu. Is there an estimate number for the ridership between Jasper or Hinton to Jasper? And do we know how many workers living in Hinton that will commute to positions in Jasper?
Maybe I'll take that one, Deputy Mayor Melnick. So at this time, we're working with the JRCC. I don't believe we have a listing or, of people that have been displaced to Hinton. Council will remember that this was a part of our original ask back in September to the Government of Alberta, with the intention of opening up a broader range of housing opportunities to Jasperites. The funding is for a 2-year, was it
2029.
Yeah, so to 2029. So the draft schedule that Aaron referenced is our current estimate on, okay, well, how could we find the right balance between providing, good frequency that would allow somebody to legitimately choose to live in Hinton and remain connected to employment and school and community in Jasper. And we need to have enough trips per day, but we wanted to do it over a long enough period. And we wanted to do that understanding that we don't have specific information about where people have moved. And that over the course of the next 3 years, it's likely to change as people are recruited to Jasper. And we know that local employers are going to be struggling with staff this summer, probably next summer, and maybe the summer after that. I mean, it's been a historic problem. Jasper's recovery over the next 3 years.
Sorry, I'm having trouble.
Jasper's recovery over the next 3 years, obviously, there's gonna be a lot of variability. So that's all a very long way of saying we looked at establishing a service, establishing the best combination of length of time that we could have the service and frequency that we could deliver it, but we don't have a clear indication of the numbers. The intention is that this would be fully funded through the Government of Alberta transit grant that was provided. They provided $2 million. We would have an opportunity to potentially offset some of the cost or extend, I guess, the operation through revenue. But the Government of Alberta said, we're giving you $2 million, figure out how to best use it. We'll see what the marketplace says we can get for 2 million, that we can get. And administration will try to build a service, and it will be interesting to see what the demand is over time, as Jasper's recovery progresses.
Go ahead, Councillor Keller.
And if the demand was very low, then would we look at not doing the service, or would we do a smaller service? Like, I'm just curious, on the demand side.
I think, and again, appreciating that demand will likely change over time. I would expect that it might be low in the first summer, and it'll be interesting to see over the course of the following winter and the next summer after that, how it changes. This a regularly scheduled public service is a pretty new innovation. I think that it's been something that's been referenced in a number of previous plans, but just hasn't been put in place. So I would expect that it will be low to start, that it will grow over time. And any of the provincial funds that we don't use, then we just would forego them. So it probably is in the community's interest to make sure that we maximize the use of those funds to deliver the maximum amount of service possible. There is no benefit to local ratepayers of reducing the service and giving the money back to Government of Alberta. We cannot reallocate it to property taxes. And if we don't use it, we lose it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. My question is, I'm curious what kind of conversations that have been had with the town of Hinton and just around stops. And I know, back to Councillor Keller, everybody's comments earlier, this could be a service used by everybody, I would assume. And it's a service that I've heard has been wanted for some time. It will be interesting to see how it actually works, but I'm just curious what kind of conversations I've had with the town of Hinton.
That's a great question. We have been in conversation various, I'm losing track of time a little bit, but definitely for the last 6 to 8 months. I am in touch with the FCSS manager in Hinton who runs the Hinton transit system. We have a call scheduled shortly because they've just been in the process of kind of revamping their local system. For now, the tentative transit schedule that's in the RFP looks at Hinton's existing transit schedule to line up service to the Park West Mall stop, which is the westmost stop in Hinton. So the approach that we've been taking now, but as CAO Given mentioned, could change pending feedback on the service and lessons learned over the next few years, is to try to maximize the funding between the communities and not provide redundant service within Hinton and within Jasper. So that's why we're trying to connect with the very westmost stop in Hinton, but make sure that folks could ride the Hinton transit system to connect with the regional service.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm just gonna take the opportunity because like transit is in front of us here today. You know, with a disclaimer that, you know, I have been in support of transit from the start, but there has been rumblings from certain groups suggesting transit costs us a lot of money. We should cancel transit, or we should put transit on a hiatus. You know, what would that look like if council gave you the direction to, hey, you know, we're looking to save money, that we're gonna take transit off the table. You know, in this situation where we are now, what would that look like?
CAO Given.
Sure. Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Melnick. So administration certainly could come back with a more detailed response. And I did respond to a question like that a couple of meetings ago, but you know, at a high level, the cost of the transit service itself is intended to be essentially break even. aside from the capital costs associated with the construction of the facility. So as has been discussed before, there are some essentially mortgage payments on the building that are expected. They are now a part of our budget, and I'm going from memory, which is a bit faulty, but let's call it in the order of 180,000 a year for the next 5 years. And so we would still be required to pay those costs. We have a mortgage on a building, so whether we run a service or not, we're gonna have to pay for the building, our portion of the cost of the building. But the balance of the service is essentially break even based on subsidies from parties like the 2 school districts that receive school service and from Parks Canada. We also have agreement with Jasper Park Lodge, who have come on our corporate bulk purchase program to provide transit access for their employees. And so we would lose that revenue. And we would have to have discussions with those funders about whether they might like to resume funding in the future, and whether the discontinuance of the service for any period of time, how that would impact that relationship. But the net savings to the municipality might be in the area of $200,000, maybe, because there is funding that is provided to the transit system from reserves and from paid parking. That funding could be redirected somewhere else, but again, as I say, it would probably be under $200,000 total that could be redirected. Part of the funding comes from the public parking and transportation reserve, which has an explicit purpose to support those types of things, not necessarily for to offset taxes. So again, I don't, that $200,000 is probably a generous estimate, recognizing that some of those are reserve funds that are specific for this kind of purpose.
Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just to follow up with the regional transportation initiative, do you see that possibly eroding the viability of our local transit? I do, see that we are going to different locations and serving different customers, but is there any chance that might erode, our numbers or the Jasper transit numbers?
I'll maybe, Erin's been looking at the numbers, Deputy Mayor Melnick, Erin's been looking at the numbers, so she might have more insight, but again, I just really want to stress how distinct the services are. Administration's approach is explicitly not to duplicate our local transit service or to supplement our local transit service. So, and that's a part of a condition of the funding from the government of Alberta. So, the regional system also doesn't go to what are currently our most frequented locations and routes. They continue to be served by Jasper Transit and sort of the model that's going forward. So Erin, I don't know if you have any other comment about that, about the potential for overlap. There may be something between, Marmot Meadows, somebody choosing to get on, as the Councillor Keller MP mentioned before, there's some options for people. They could walk to the front of Wapiti and get on the regular Jasper Transit, or they could wait for the regional service to show up at Marmot Meadows. They have optionality there. Somebody else might choose to get off, to get on the regional transit to get out to the campsites, but it wouldn't necessarily drop them where they want to be. So we don't see it having a big overlap. I don't know, Erin, if you have anything else from the data.
The only thing I would add to that is kind of based on my hat in working in other jurisdictions on other different types of transit systems. What we would typically see is that the addition of service tends to bolster other service, particularly a regional service where folks will be arriving at the Jasper Transit Hub. They've gotten there on transit and they'll need to then get around locally. So I think more so it's probably an opportunity to bolster ridership elsewhere in the area on the local transit system.
Great, thank you. And I'd just like to apologize if I, brought up a question that was already answered when I was not here.
Councillor Keller MP.
Just to follow up on Councillor Wilson's question on the cost, that 200,000 that we say that comes from paid parking or from reserves, does that include the gas? Or is that extra on top? Because the bids, when they came in for that, like, they gas up from our So will those costs for gas, fuel for those buses be part of the 200, or is that separate?
GAO given.
Yeah, thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Mel. So I was referencing the overall approved 2025 transit operating budget, which is inclusive of things like staffing costs, fuel, contractor costs, all those things. So yes, it is. So we have a total expense, and we have a total revenue, and the two generally match out, except for the additional costs associated with the capital. So yes, those are included in the overall. The $200,000, and again, that was approximate without referencing the document. The number I referenced is the amount of municipal funds that would potentially not need to be expended if we discontinue service.
Thank you.
Your worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. I apologize if I'm getting too deep into the weeds about this. Excuse me. The Regional Recovery Transit Service is focused first, I think, on connecting displaced residents with their community and their employment. But I take it that it is at the same time a fully public transit service. And so I'm wondering whether, recognizing that compression in Jasper results in hotel rooms being occupied in Hinton, some of those visitors will be part of tour groups, but many I expect would be independent travelers. Is there money in that $2 million from the province for that can be budgeted toward advertising to make sure that visitors understand that they would have an option to bring service here? We will, I think, be challenged with parking. We're using some parking to allow businesses an opportunity to get going again when they have lost their premises. And so we may be challenged with parking overall, but a transit service connecting visitors who don't get the opportunity necessarily to stay in Jasper but want to visit Jasper would enhance both the regional service and presumably the local service, because as Ms. Tuca said, they would land at the transit, and if they want to get out to other places within the park, they might use our local transit. So I'm just wondering whether there is an opportunity to advertise that this service is available to the public generally, including people who wish to visit Jasper who wind up staying in it.
Go ahead, GAO given.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Melnick. So, although I can look in a little bit more detail at the conditional grant agreement from Government of Alberta, it is in front of me. They were pretty explicit that the use was intended to be for the provision of service. So I think any additional communication that we might want to do, any sort of promotion that we might partner with somebody like Hinton on would really be probably be out of scope. They do give us the opportunity for related project costs in addition to sort of just the contract of service, public and municipal consultation, establishment of the fare structure, integration and exchange of transit related data between services, developing a communications plan. So developing the plan to communicate, but not actually paying for advertising, and project administration are eligible costs, are eligible activities. They specifically say ineligible costs include financing charges and loan interest payments. There's no expectation that there be any financing charge or loan interest because we're not borrowing or undertaking any loans to provide the service. Any goods and services costs that are received through donations or in kind, costs already funded under their other grant programs, GST, capital expenditures. Again, there's no intention. This is going to be a turnkey contracted service. or costs associated with the ongoing delivery of the local transit service, including hardware, software purchase, installation upgrades, ongoing regular salary expenses, operational service pilots, overhead expenses, and training. So those are all excluded costs. They don't reference advertising as an excluded cost, but they also don't reference it as an included cost. So administration would default to saying, we want to make sure that it's very clear to government of Alberta that we only use their money for the things that they said we could use it for. So the development of a communications plan may be something that we would use it for. That said, I think we want to ensure that we use the funds that are provided to provide as good a service as we can. And so if we can eke out some more operating hours or another trip per day, I think that that's where the priority would lie. We probably have a number of other forms and opportunities to sort of do advertising to make sure that visitors are aware of the opportunity.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given. Obviously, a regional recovery transit service assists with social recovery, connects people with the community, but as we've recognized from the outset, economic recovery is absolutely foundational. And that is part of the recovery that we need. Every visitor is welcome. If we can find opportunities to get visitors on regional transit, they absolutely support our recovery. So it seems like not a long shot, but I appreciate that the devil is in the details. So I leave that to you. Thank you for that.
Thank you for the questions and responses, councillors. Are there any more questions for Ms. Troop or for CEO Given? Seeing none, I would believe that we would need a motion to receive the transit initiatives update for information. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you again for the detailed information and also being able to respond to all of our various questions regarding the two services. On the agenda, I think we can continue going unless before we go in camera. Our next item is the motion action list, and I would defer to CEO Given for an update on the list.
Sure. Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Melnick. So just a few updates. I believe they're all noted, but I can provide some additional color commentary perhaps. The moving traffic enforcement was identified for this month, and speaking to Director Nadon, this continues to be a priority for administration. Just given workload, we haven't been able to get to it. But as we see the summer season approaching, moving traffic violations continue to be a concern, particularly with the increased volume of traffic around contractors. So administration is still intending to bring forward recommendations to council on that item. The Parcel CH Access Road and Spruce Avenue Development Award and Local Improvement Levy. Administration is still in discussion with the RCMP about the future use of that site, which may cause some changes to how we'd approach financing that construction. So we just need some more opportunity to have some discussion. We would hope for an update in June. The transit bus RFP, administration provided an update sort of in the context of our quarterly updates to council. We don't foresee anything coming forward on this, but again, we will maybe move that forward to June so that if there is any new information, we could either inform you at that time or look to move forward again. The in-town contractor camps, interim residence and laydown requests. My understanding is that the JRCC team has been working with Parks Canada to identify opportunities to facilitate some changes to the land use policies to enable more of these types of uses on private leaseholds. There may still need to be some use of public property or public road right of ways, but this is under discussion. And that's why we're asking to have a little bit more time before we report back to council on that. We weren't in a position to recommend any legislative changes because we're not exactly sure about the scope at this time, given that parks may be able to satisfy some of the demand. And then the Rockaboo climbing facility, administration is in discussion with this facility operator. Their current approval for their location is to May 15th. I think they're still discussing what their strategy would be and whether there might be any grants available to them to support relocation of the facility. So we're allowing that operator to have that time. Again, the previous approval is, I believe, until May 15th. And so we still have some time in May to be able to come forward to council with recommendations. And then there were a couple of other items that were added over the last couple of weeks. But I believe those were all the updates that administration want to provide. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, CAO Gibbon. And are there any questions for Mr. Gibbon by councillors? Your worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. Just with respect to the transit bus RFP, the motion is very specific to reissuing an RFP. And when I asked earlier, it was in reference to this, and I wonder whether that recommendation might be deferred longer than June. I can appreciate that administration could come back at any time with an updated report as they did today. But that certainly suggests to the public that we would be looking for a recommendation to reissue an RFP in June of this year, which in all the circumstances, I think, might cause some anxiety within the public. So it's just the particularity of the motion and when it comes back that has me concerned about whether we actually mean to do that in June of this year.
Go ahead, Mr. Gibbon.
This is exactly the kind of conversation, Deputy Mayor Melnick, that the motion action list is intended to facilitate. So no, administration doesn't expect that we would be reissuing a RFP for electric buses in June. There may be additional information, as Aaron noted. We're going to be working with the QTRIC related organization on joint procurement. So there may be work happening on that. There may be new information, but administration doesn't expect that we would be in a position to issue an RFP anytime before October likely. And so, given election and budget, this likely, the actual reissuance of an RFP based on the partner organization. I also can't say the QTIP. Their past procurement, they said it was about a year from when they identified the partners to when they actually did the RFP. So at this stage, they are looking for additional municipalities that might wish to partner. So I would say that we wouldn't be in a position to come forward with an RFP recommendation or process before the end of 2025. So if council wanted to adjust this to give it a longer lead time, that would be fine. Again, the intention is that the direction, and it's understood that administration should not issue or launch an RFP without, council's involvement or awareness. Administration doesn't foresee any action on that happening before the end of this year.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbon. Are there any other questions on the motion action list and the recommended changes? Seeing none, I would look for an approval of the motion action list. Councillor Keller MP. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion to approve the updated motion action list? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to item number 9 on our agenda, which is councillor upcoming meetings. Are there councillors willing or wishing to report on the meetings and upcoming meetings? As councillors are going through their calendar, I will bring up one thing. I will be attending NETMA on Wednesday. It's being hosted by the Yellowhead Jasper Historical Society at the museum, and as board member, I'll be participating and welcoming people to the NEPMA that evening, being tomorrow night. And on Thursday, I'll be in Hinton for the Community Futures West Yellowhead monthly board meeting on April 24th. Councillor Watson.
Yes, on Friday the 25th, I'll be attending the Family and Community Support Services Association of Alberta's board meeting.
Councillor Keller-Hartley.
On Friday, I will be attending the Evergreen staff event, World Active.
Thank you both. Other councillors? Moving right along. So we'll move on to upcoming events, and just to review, we've had one or two additions. We have a wildfire information session at 7 p.m. on April 23rd in the multipurpose hall. Prior to that, as I mentioned earlier, NEPMA will be at the Jasper Yellowhead Museum and Archives from 4:30 to 6:30. Makes for a very packed evening. The Jasper Business Recovery Lunch and Learn series continues at noon on both the 24th and May 1st, and that's in person at 631 Patricia Street. Next Tuesday will be the 5th Tuesday in April, and we have no scheduled council meeting that day. We will resume our normal meeting schedule on the first Tuesday of May. On April 30th, we have an invitation in a community learning event, which will be held at 965 Switzer Drive in Hinton. It's enhancing wildlife resilience from the perspective from Logan Lake and Jasper. And also the week of the 4th to the 10th will be Emergency Preparedness Week. Continuing on, in that first week of May, we have the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, and 2 SLGP2Q I plus people, and this is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women G2S, also known as Red Dress Day, on Monday the 5th. Following that, on the Wednesday, the Alberta Emergency Alert test will be at 1:55 p.m., which we should all be receiving on our phones if you have signed up. Emergency Preparedness Week open house will be on May 7th as well, and that is at the Emergency Services Building from 3 until 7. At the end of the week, we'll have the Community Fire Smart Day on May 10th. The Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce General Meeting will be on May 14th. And we also have a Alberta-Japan Twin Municipalities Conference, which will take place in Stony Plain, May 23rd and 24th. Last year, we hosted this conference here in Jasper. Evergreen Foundation have planned a 65th year anniversary party from 11 to 2 on Saturday the 24th at Alpine Summit Seniors Lodge, and I believe there'll be a barbecue being held and entertainment for kids to help celebrate the anniversary. And then at the end of May and into June, councillors may be attending the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference and Trade Show in Ottawa. Are there any other, let's go ahead, Councillor Keller-Hartley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. I had a call from Mrs. Marks last night, and she extended an invite to council to attend the seniors dinner on April 30th here at the multi-purpose hall. It starts at 5, doors open at 5, dinner 5:30, it's $25.
Can you do that? And it's at 5:30 on the 30th. Any other dates that we should be having? on the upcoming events? Thank you all. We now come to item 11, which was originally adjournment. We've changed that to item 11.1, an in-camera session regarding strategic priorities. And I believe after that in-camera session, do we expect that we'll be making any motions? No? Okay. As such, we will shortly be moving in camera. I'd like to thank the individuals who have tuned in to this particular meeting online, and also the individuals who have attended in council chambers today. This, of course, meeting will be put on our YouTube page for individuals who are not able to watch live. And we look forward to being back in council chambers in what I believe will be May 6th with the regular council meeting. And if there are no other business for today's meeting, I would entertain a motion to go in camera. Thank you, Councillor Hall. Before I call that motion for a vote, as I say, we will not be returning other than to come out of camera to adjourn the meeting formally. So with that motion to go in camera, all those in favor? Thank you, and thank you everyone, as I said, in the gallery and also online. We are now moving in camera.